And just like that, we are back. Another week, another episode of Chris Sees the Internet. Man, this week we have Curtis King, good friend of mine, and he's my tour mate on the Happiness of Pursuit Festival tour. This is not a show you want to miss. 60 East, Curtis King, Noah James, and myself and Gene Flo as the Invisible Ponchos, with Parker Edison narrating the show. It's going to be amazing. Coming to a city near you, in fact, in real time, we kick off the festival tour tomorrow in San Diego, May 11th, at the Rainbow SD. If you're an artist looking to compete in the competition at the last minute, maybe you're catching this at the last minute, thoughtfest.net/tour. But if you're an artist trying to get on any of the other tour stops, it's not too late. Thoughtfest.net/tour. Sign up. The winner gets 15 minutes on this year's festival. That's insane. Immediately, winning this contest puts you on the map in a really, really big way. If you're an artist, it'll definitely help your career. And we talked to Curtis a little bit about that, on what he thinks artists need to do to win the competition. We talk a little bit about the tour. And even though Curtis usually is giving you mad game on production, the hip hop world, even pop culture, because he's reacting to videos, this episode, we really get into his mind and his creative process. We talk about his lows and highs, how he deals with those. And I feel like this is one of the deepest conversations we've had in a while. And he's a good friend of mine. We talk a lot. But I really got to learn some stuff about him, some stuff that I even personally didn't know. So I think this is an amazing episode. If you're an artist looking to get ahead in your own career and maybe you need some inspiration, Kurt is full of inspiration. He's a hard worker, and he's one of the guys I definitely go to when I need some advice on certain things. He is a trusted friend and ally, and this conversation was really dope, man. So without further ado, Curtis King with 2 S's. You know what I'm saying? 2 S's, not one. He's one of those guys who got 2 S's. Curtis King with 2 S's. Without further delay, this week on Chris Sees the Internet. I think what I'd like to know right off the bat is, as a creative person and somebody who puts some importance in their life towards like your mind, your mental state, like getting yourself into a place where you are creative, I guess, right? With somebody, you're somebody who does that in that pursuit, or maybe maintenance, or work. Have you has it led you to question like your own place, like in all of this, like maybe that comes through your faith, maybe that comes through you thinking about the existential things in the world, like are those two things connected in your life?
Definitely. I think it's a reason I come to those conversations whenever I need to make a major pivot. And I'm always thinking about the zoomed out point of view. I'm always thinking about legacy. I'm always thinking about what impact is this ultimately going to have, and what significance will it have? Will I have walked this earth and contributed, with what everybody contributes? Am I just consuming, or do I leave here and people genuinely have a good memory of our interactions? And not even just that, but have I genuinely contributed value to those around me? Is something that I think that in the beginning I thought about a lot. Not that I don't think about it as much, but it's more under control now, in that I know that no matter what it is that I do or don't do, most people have kind of made their own assumptions.
Yeah.
And I should probably be more so concerned with being than trying to prove that that's what it is. If I am that, then there's nothing that can disturb that, right? It's just, it's indestructible. I am who I am at that point. And so that's kind of more so where I put my focus at. And then just recognizing if I believe that at the core of living, the secret to living is giving, which is a Tony Robbins quote, then I give every single day of my life.
Mm.
Right now, how valuable that is person to person will vary. But one thing that does not vary is that no matter what it is that I'm doing, I'm giving every single day. And starts with me. So as long as I can continue that, not can continue that, as long as I'm allowed to continue that, I'm living in purpose. 'Cause
Have
I know
you
that
ever
no matter what I've done is going to always ultimately lead back to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever found yourself giving to somebody or something, and realizing maybe like it wasn't necessary for you to be like giving so much? Like has an example of that ever happened? Like where you had to pull back and go like, okay, I am expending a large amount of energy in this area, and it's really not up to me to decide the outcome of that area. So there's only so much I can do.
Right. Well, in the moment, I mean, I've had many moments like that. Absolutely. I think just the human experience is that, we all are exchanging something, right? Maybe we're exchanging energy for someone who needs that, who's just consuming, and they're only in a position right there to consume. And in the moment when it's happening, I found out that it felt like a waste of time. I was absolutely pissed off, just like anybody else. Where I'm at now with it is that um I try to move away from that because I feel like it puts me in a headspace of scarcity,
Mm.
in that what I'm giving is from a source that's going to run out. Now, I do at the same time simultaneously believe in the necessity to protect your energy. I do believe in the necessity of putting your energy in the proper directions, but I don't think that any of those things were waste of energy. I think that in at the expense of sounding very cliche, that it was for a lesson.
Mm.
And I don't think the only lesson was not to exert energy in that way. I think that sometimes the lesson is maybe that was the value that you gave to that person,
Yeah. Like no
was in
matter
that
what.
moment listening to their bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Is what in this moment, whoever painted this picture, I believe it to be God, whoever painted this picture, that's exactly how the picture had to play out, because I know that every action has a reaction and there's a domino effect that inevitably leads to some kind of decision. If that person is today happy, it's a domino effect of things that were there. Who am I to believe that I'm so above being part of the domino effect that led to that? And then also, I think it's important to tame our own expectations of when we're giving this energy. And I think that's been the hardest thing for me, is that when I give the energy, there's a part of me that always feels like, well, when I need you, then I'm expecting you to exert the same thing. But the
Right.
lesson in that situation is that living with that expectation is going to set you up for disappointment.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no matter what, I tell you this, you've known me for years. We've had many different conversations. One mountain that I continuously will die on is that life is happening for me and not to me.
Yeah.
At the expense of sounding like, out of my mind, at the expense of sounding like it's fairy tale-ish, I guess, to a certain degree to some people. I don't care. I live by every single thing, bad or good. The worse it is, the more I believe that now. And it hasn't always been like that, but I truly believe that.
And I got to talking with a friend of mine, Parker Edison, and he was talking about, we were both talking about how for artists, I've seen this similar struggle with a lot of artist stories where they talk about struggling with the idea of becoming exactly who they see themselves as, And there's like this little bit of there's this point where they all reach where they have to you ultimately have to take the leap, right? Like either you are everything that you think that you are, or you're not. And but actually trying it is far and few between. Very few people ever actually try to put it to the test. We talked about like hitting that wall occasionally where you're like, all right, if I go all in into everything that I am, if I live the art, if I live every moment as the person that I am, could that result in me losing my mind? Like, could it result in you not being able to handle it, not being able to deal with it? Because there's also those stories too, right? Where we've lost people to their minds because creatively they were pushing boundaries. It's that idea of like, I've seen this level of what this is, what this all is. Can I see more through my art? Can I see more? Can I push this more? Can I have a bigger connection? Can I have and that I can see at times, at least I've seen the stories in society that, sometimes that leads to a bad thing. Is that connected to anything bad in you? Like, or maybe bad is the wrong word, but something that is out of what you feel is your normal energy. Is it connected to anything like that?
No, and maybe at one point it was, but here's what I've come to the conclusion of about the idea of losing one's mind.
Yes.
I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that we judge when someone loses their mind more so on how they do it. What's their actions? What do they do as they lose their mind? I think Jim Carrey said something that alluded to depression being the face on the inside disagreeing with the face on the outside, and basically tired of playing this game that we play that I'm all right, everything's okay. And depression is that stage in which the face on the inside says, I can't fake this anymore. And something I've noticed about the loudest moments in my life of change weren't screams, they were whispers. They were very small shifts in the midst of me chaotically moving around like human beings often do to try to change something and make it happen overnight. It was very minor shifts. After I went off the edge and I came back, I recognized it's almost like throwing around all your furniture and all your clothes looking for your keys, and then you finally lay on the bed because you're exhausted from all this searching, and you recognize they've been hanging on the same hook that you've always put them on. But this time, they were just hidden behind, the mounted TV. I'm just throwing stuff out there. But it's hard for us to see that when we're actually doing and not being what we naturally are, human beings. We're supposed to be in that state. There's also something I heard that 4 years ago that I think really sat me on my ass about this idea of losing one's mind. There's a spiritual teacher, Jamaican spiritual teacher named Muji, and he talks about the idea of whenever we have a thought, let's say that first thought exists on one level where we say, I think that I'm a very annoying person. There's another voice that can say, I agree, sometimes it is, but is it really that? As these two levels are engaging in a conversation, you have an ability to now view that as a third party. Well, what is that? He considers that to be the watcher. Now, I'm going to show you how I'm relaying this to what you're saying. He's saying that as the watcher. That is a presence within you that is truly you. That is a presence within you that has existed since you were a kid, you were in your 20s, your 30s, and seems to be unchanged by the outer circumstances. It's just something in you that has felt the same, right? It is just you. That's who you really are. And society has convinced us that we are whatever our mind concocts.
Yeah.
We are our labels. I'm a producer. I'm a rapper. And when we attach to those things, we give the mind an unfair advantage. And so when I think about these type of things of the mind being, I just almost like I'm giving action to something that ultimately doesn't have full control. Because what happens when I go to sleep? The mind's going to do as the mind does, right? What happens when I lose my mind in a moment and I do irrational things? Well, there's still a part of me that was capable of doing that. So I try not to give the mind too much, even though it's a supremely powerful thing.
Yeah.
I try not to give it too much credit because I'm recognizing that there's some force within me that's even able to observe my mind losing itself.
Which might be, are you feeling like, do you lean towards the idea like that's who you actually are? Like that person or that
Absolutely.
that state,
Absolutely.
right? Like that's
that not even state. It's something that is formless. It's something that cannot make sense out of freedom because it is that.
Mm-hmm.
Like how do you explain to somebody how you feel if you're feeling it and they couldn't feel that? To it just is that state. Instead of searching for freedom, it is that state. I feel like although there's it's obviously we're all discovering to try to figure things out, and sometimes that might even clash with our religious beliefs, but something about that resonates with me. And when I heard it, it relieved me of so much inner like chaos, because then I realized like another reason why Muji says is, he says, you ever notice that people who age quickly generally have a story to tell, very hard story to tell. But aside from that, they also tend to hold on to things that people have done. They tend to be people who are like heavy-hearted and stubborn. And what I notice is that sort of my demeanor has stopped me from aging in certain ways. And then when I do get in that place where I'm being stubborn like that, my body will be a reflection of that. But I do feel like being exposed to that idea made me recognize that there is something that is detached from my name, something that is detached from my brain that is actually more powerful. And if I recognize that's there, sometimes just the observation alone is enough to cool me off.
Have you been able to connect those thoughts with what happens to you when inspiration hits, like when music is coming through you? Like how does it, because you just started doing this thing that I do as well, and I actually watched the process of you doing it on some of your lives where you stopped writing for. Are you still doing that? Are you still?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right. So you stopped writing and you freestyle a song together. You freestyle a song together. That's the way I like to describe it. And that's everything. The melodies, everything. Nothing ever really there. You removed a step.
And I've removed objects.
Right. Yeah, and you compress the amount of time too that it would take normally. Even that little extra step of taking your phone out or writing down on a piece of paper or whatever, looking at it as you're rapping, all those things are extra steps. Have you, since you've done that, like in talking about like the spiritual connection or whatever, has that increased because of that new action? Like, do you feel what feels different now when you do?
Definitely. Trust is a huge thing, in that sometimes we can't build trust in what we're doing because there's too many triggers that pull us out of that trust. There's too many things that I was seeing on my phone where it might be just the clock or notifications that start feeding into the FOMO, or as I'm writing it out, just looking at a screen and then looking at another screen and then thinking about interacting with my chat. And like there's things that get triggered because of the domino effect of being on these devices. So now what I'm doing is just as free as my production process is. And this is why I encourage every creative to find as many things to be creative at, even if you're terrible, especially if you're terrible at them, because they're going to all teach you lessons that you can carry on into your music. So the same Curtis that is sitting down in front of video editing software is not writing down the steps to video editing. I'm playing it off of my instinct. I'm playing it off of my memory. I'm playing it off of how I view this as a viewer. That same thing is translated within my music as a producer. I'm doing chopping when I'm chopping samples. I'm listening to things and giving real-time feedback. The only part of my art form that I was not doing that with, music related, was my lyric writing. Why? Because I felt like, as a lyricist who was around lyricists, I felt a pressure to fill up my notepad with as many words as possible. I felt a pressure to sound as sophisticated lyrically as I could, even at the expense of telling my story. Mm-hmm. If I could be colorful with what I'm doing, it could entertain enough people to where I wouldn't have to be concerned with, telling the stories. And that just didn't sit well with me. There's moments where I just let it happen. I drink a little whiskey and I feel like, you know what, it's not that deep. Let's just make something. And I think that's valuable as well. But this is by far the most enjoyable songwriting has ever been for me in my 20-year process, is when I just go for it, because it almost feels illegal at this point for me to have done a process one way for so long. And then I'm like,
but that process feels good.
But
breaking the rule feels good, though.
It does. But then there's a part of me that says that line sounds really good, but would it have been better if you would have spent time on a pen and paper? Like, if you had more time? Like, I think sometimes we overestimate the value of the final draft and underestimate the value of our rough drafts. And I think that as I'm walking through this process, I'm recognizing, like, there's not much difference in terms of improvement between the verse that I spent an hour writing and the one that I spent 25 minutes.
Right.
Because I listen back and I'm like, as I'm rehearsing for the tour, I'm like, these verses are so much easier to remember. Well, why is that? They're more rhythmic because I'm more in tune with the music and less what's on my pad. Two, they're more conscious of space. So I'll say something and feel like, I should let that breathe a little bit longer. But when you're writing. And you're conscious of these things, but not as conscious, because look at what you're facing. So now that I have no lyrics to face, I'm literally relying upon my mind's ability to catch rhythm, to say things in a way where maybe when you write them out, Curtis, they're a little bit too formal. And when I say them, it sounds more conversational, which is the music that I enjoy the most. My favorite rapper in the world is Andre 3000. And so many of the things that he says sound conversational. His best verse to me, his most classic verse, is the Elevator's Me and You verse. And that's literally a conversation about somebody he met in the mall who was asking him about his financial situation and how it stacks up to his popularity. So that's my foundation, but I just wasn't tapping into it. And now that I am, like, I couldn't love this music anymore.
And so what is happening when you come in, you start making a beat, even when you're not going live, when you're just by yourself, you're a beat, and you're like, I want to rap. What is? It's always live.
It's always live.
Okay,
that's
so
the part of it.
Okay, so every time then that process happens, and you're putting yourself into that place. What do you, like, in your mind's eye, like, what do you see is happening as what is actually, what is the process that's happening to receive the inspiration?
I'm running towards uncomfortability on purpose. And the moment that some thought comes up to me that, oh, you can't do that right now, I go to it. I run to it. I run to uncomfortability. I challenge myself on that, even from the mornings, right? And it's to a fault. Sometimes I have to chill out and know my body just needs a rest at this moment. But if I get the thought of it is cold in here, the last thing I'd probably do is take a cold shower. I run to it because I recognize that, like I said earlier, the loudest moments of change have been whispers. And when I lean into those things, great things happen. And I recognize that the majority of the people that you come in contact with are not willing to lean into those things because they don't have to. There's no pressure to do it. They wait until it's the worst case scenario when they have to. So when the creative process is no different in that there's a certain way of rapping, I think to myself, you're not going to rap over a beat like that. You're not going to finish this whole song in 3 hours. Better yet, you're not going to finish this whole song in 3 hours and fail in front of all these people that are watching, are you? I run to that. And so that's why every one of these songs are live streamed, because it's like, even my mixing process, you're not going to show them your mixing process and you're not truly a mixing engineer. Yes, I am going to do that. Well, what if they see you make mistakes? They will. Well, what if they stop watching? Then they were meant to stop watching. Like, I challenge myself so that I remove as much fear as I can. I can't get rid of it all. But the more I challenge myself on it, I think the better I become, at not even just as a creative, but as a human being. And I force myself to be in these uncomfortable places, because if I don't, life gonna do it anyways, right?
Yeah.
Can I really get away from it?
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to Gene Flow about you, and I was saying, like, Kurt has like this gear in him that I've seen that he can shift into, where it's like, the best example I have of it outside of him is like it's just like an athlete in the tunnel, like a football player inside the tunnel who's like ready to go out onto the field. And I'm like, and so there's a part of I guess, like, the essence of what can come out of like competition that Kurt can tap into to fuel certain things in his life, or just to get into that mode. And I wonder, is that from some, like, a way you grew up? Like, do you like what taught? I know a little bit about your dad and the type of person he was. Is that kind of directly related to that? Is it like being able to turn on that fifth gear, you know what I mean? And like, give me the ball type shit.
I don't know how much of it anymore is fueled by that, but for a lot of years it was fueled by upbringing and being in situations where I was in some trouble by my pops, and he was like, punishment. I don't even want to see your face right now. You gonna be in your room. And spending all this time in my room on a computer definitely kind of molds you in a certain type of way. But I used to pull from that when I wanted to prove something to him. I'm no longer in that place, especially.
That's who you were talking to in your mind?
My own. Many years, and he knows this, and I've talked to him. It's funny, we can have those conversations now, but there was a lot of those times where I was like, do you want him to be right? Do you want him, like, you're proving him right that this was a dumb idea for you to go and be an artist? What do you have to talk about? You don't have a rapper's voice. Like, there's so many different things that he said specifically that I don't pass judgment on him being wrong for it, because now that as I'm a dad, I recognize like how we'll talk out of love, and it gets misinterpreted. The signal gets mixed by our biases in our upbringings and our experience and our POV. We're looking at a beach ball that has a certain set of colors, but if you flip it over, he has a whole different set of colors. We're seeing the same beach ball. You want to see me do well. I want to do well as well, but I really feel like this is the route that I should go. And I'm prepared to go through some very hard times to get there. And I think that was a thing where he understands it a whole lot more now, because I make a living off of this. But many years it was, but it's just like Red Bull. It's short-lived. It was short-lived, and it wasn't enough to get me everywhere that I wanted to go, because he didn't do me wrong. He just had a difference of opinion. Get over yourself, Curtis. So now what it is when I push this DIY tribe, this do-it-yourself tribe, I recognize that that's what it's always been for me, is that in the beginning, Nobody wanted to work with me. In their opinion, I wasn't that good, or they didn't understand the way that I wanted to do things. And I'm recognizing that no matter how high I move up and what stage I move to, there's someone else that has that arrogance. It may not necessarily be other rappers or folks in the industry. It may just be a graphic designer that's like, you don't have the capability. You need me. A video editor, a videographer said, what are you going to do it yourself? That for me, I love it so much because I'm a harsher critic than they could ever be. So now as I get to doing these things, I'm like, everything that when I switch into that next gear, a lot of that is also me saying, well, can you do it? I have questions too. And after talking to this flow state expert named Steven Kotler and him confirming something that I've always had questions about, like, should I be focused on quantity? Should I be focused on quality? Like what's going to ultimately get me where I need to go? He said it's backed by studies that you don't get to quality without quantity. And that is what I'm doing right now with my YouTube. I'm pivoting on my YouTube and recognizing that I learned so much more by uploading. What is it? We're 28 days into this month. I learned so much more by putting up 28 videos in this month, once a day, than I would if I did it once a week. Because every single day I've edited a new video, made a new thumbnail, A/B split test titles, tried thumbnail styles, font styles, and then found something that stuck and then just rammed through. But that extra gear that kicks in is I don't know. It's not from at least consciously, it's not from that. It's just a matter of like, nobody's coming to save you. So what you gonna do?
Yeah. Which
really
I can see
that you can do it yourself.
Yeah, and I can see like how like layered that is because in some ways, it is connected still to that thing that grew out of your relationship with your dad, but now it's being harnessed for something different. Like you took the energy and you're harnessing it for something different. And that answers the next thing I was going to ask you, because I wanted to know in your mind's eye, like who was the they, like the when you say like they, are they like, but that answers it. It's more of an idea of, it's not even like they's not even like a person for you. It's like they's the idea of can't.
Yeah,
like
they is given way too much credit to whoever.
Right.
Whoever I assess that to is not enough for me to wake up every day with fire in my heart. That's not enough.
Yeah.
Like I have to at some point truly love, and I do. Like when you've been to my house and you know like my studio is now maybe 80-20 music. It's majority, it's 80-20 video production equipment and 20% music equipment. Because I love the idea of, okay, well, media's not gonna reach out to me. What if I just become my own media outlet? Well, how great can you make it look like? I can make it look like a TV broadcast. You sure about that? Well, let me do some OBS research. Yeah, I think we're getting closer. What would make this even more? What about if I bought a slider? Do you know how to use one? No, but I have YouTube. Okay, get a slider. How many cameras can we do? How many cameras can my PC handle? Let's test out 4. And so these step-by-step decisions, and then even watching TV with a different lens and saying, oh, I like how they have those lower third ads with that I can tell was made with green screen. When somebody comes on screen and they cross their arms and then the stuff comes up. I do that now for my like buttons. Like my like buttons are literally me playing my other characters and that pops up. But I get excited by that. That, like, I'm more driven by
the challenge.
Like you said, this idea of can't existing, when it's like you obviously whoever is assessing this can't, you don't know what year we're living in. Because I was this person in the late 90s. I was this person through the 2000s, before AI got involved, before technology evolved. This is just my DNA. This is my pedigree. So especially now I get excited because I'm like, I can do so much more with so much less.
So when you look at yourself right now, are you like if there was like a percentile, like what percentile are you at when evaluating yourself as a whole? Are you like I'm already there? I'm the person that I'm living my existence, or like I'm still working on these projects internally. Like where are you at, like percentage wise? You think?
I, I can't even give you a percentage. I really couldn't. I really
Okay.
can't, because of whatever percentage I have, I know it's not accurate. And I haven't even given that thought. Like it's so crazy. Like, Chris, the other day I'm walking around and recognizing that I've reached a new level of assertiveness
Mm.
that I don't think I've ever had in my life. I don't not even think. I know that literally living in it real time. I've never had this before in my life. Even a certain amount of assertiveness when it comes to just dumb things like knowing exactly where I left something that I haven't used in the last 4 weeks and having a visual picture of it and trusting in that and walking straight up to it, knowing this is exactly where it's at and it's there.
Mm.
But now that exists even within my creative decision making. And I know so much of that has to do with, once again, those loud changes that are brought to me in whispers. And right now it feels like I'm experiencing some level of brain development, some level of spiritual development that is allowing me to now see, okay, there's more levels. Whatever percentage I'm at, to answer your question, there are so many more levels to get
Yeah.
even beyond this, but I'm closer than I've ever been before. That's the one thing I can say about that.
I always like to understand the process of how an artist, especially people I care about, like how you got to the point where you are at least you're at least like, yo, I am an artist. Like, was it a series of moments? Were you always on your? Obviously, you were always on your way there, but was there like a chain reaction of something that happened where you woke up one day and you're like, you know what? What the fuck? I'm not just someone who's going to be just some normal person, 9 to 5 person, for instance. Like, I'm not going to do that. Was there like something that was a catalyst for
Super
that?
early.
Yeah.
Super early.
Yep.
Like back to X-Men on Kids Fox
Yeah.
era, right?
That's what I
I think
wanted.
there's
That's what I want to know.
right. Like way back to early Nickelodeon time period with Doug, and they told stories on these cartoons that, and it's going to sound ridiculous because the cartoons have shifted so much, but they told stories in Captain Planet that had life lessons embedded within them. They told stories that, if you were listening, really had you feeling as a kid that sky was the limit. It really had you feeling like you could be literally whatever you set your mind to. I'm from that generation. I just so happen to be one of the kids, and I'm surrounded by a lot of other uh, kids that have grown into grown-ups that took the message and believed it. Some people heard the message and thought it was corny, but I remember watching all that and watching all of these Snick at Night TV shows and recognizing, like, whatever you're trying to get me to aspire to, I am that, and I can be that on every level. And so I knew that I would be in some kind of creative field because the first thing that I took to wasn't sports. It wasn't all the things the kids were into. It was video games and drawing. Right. I thought I was going to be an animator. I used to watch X-Men and want to draw as many versions of Wolverine that I could. Right. And I remember just being obsessed over trying to figure out how to draw a hand, and I couldn't nail it quite correctly. And so I would go get, these sketchbooks with my mom, and I'd bring those home, and I'd sit there and study how to make a Spider-Man web and all these things. And so I knew somehow, some way that I was destined to have a profession that was outside of the norm. And so it's, and then also too, knowing that my mom was someone who all my life, majority of her life, she's played the piano. She's always had me in church. She's always had me around her being creative. The fact that even though my dad wasn't necessarily uh, creative based, he it's funny because he's in awe of the things that he sees now. He's like, I don't know where that comes from. He's like, I know your mom's into music, but I don't like, I look at the things that you're doing and I'm in awe of, because I can't make it make sense in my technical brain.
Yeah.
I just wish I would have heard that from him earlier, but I'm,
Yeah. I hear you. That's a whole nother show.
But at that, that's a whole other show. But at that point, I recognized from the very early stages that I saw human beings in a different way. I remember in middle school having this thought that I was like, I really wish, like I was talking to God in an auditorium amongst auditorium full of kids who had just finished lunch. They're all talking about whatever they're going through, and just not even going through, they're just having kid conversations. And I'm sitting there in Curtis Middle School auditorium, and I have a thought to myself as my brain wanders. I wish I had the ability to step in someone else's shoes and know every detail they couldn't describe in words. This is me in like middle school. You know what I'm saying? And these thoughts weren't far-fetched in elementary either, but that has been the way my mind has worked from a very early stage. And I didn't know if that was something that would make me cool or a complete weirdo for even sharing it at that time. So I just didn't share it. I just had these thoughts. I had these inner dialogues that I would never share with anybody else until I found music. And then I started realizing, oh, I'm not the only weirdo, quote unquote, weirdo around here. Everybody else has a story that a narrative or a storyline that they've been kind of putting together in private in their head. And now as we get here to this canvas, we can now paint it the way we want to paint it. Sign me up. Right? Because everything that I loved about animating and being drawing these cartoons, I get to now do that through sounds. Yeah. Everything I loved about the stories that were told to me in cartoons, I get to now tell stories of my life and find ways to make it understandable and easy to understand on a first listen basis for a complete stranger. Like that is part of the things that people look at and say, man, that's such a skill set. I had no choice. I was around these things, and that's what got my attention. Now, apparently I wasn't the only one.
I love you, bro.
Definitely, man. Love you too, man. Man, I appreciate these conversations. They absolutely do not happen often. These are very rare. These are very, you pull in from folders that don't often get accessed.
Yeah. And I'm trying to, especially with the Chris Sees the Internet this time around, that was the part that anytime I talk to anybody who took it in, that's the part they liked, when we would fall into these conversations that were just what they were. They're just an exchange of ideas. I feel like, having studied creatives, I have seen patterns in things that carve out certain types of creatives, to the point where, like, it's very easy for me to meet a creative, talk to them about like their personal life first, and then kind of really be able to understand like their art. And that's helped me a lot, even in my own art, it's helped me.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing a lot of us probably have in common, because as you were talking about the idea of being hypersensitive, that is a trait, ironically, and this is gonna come out of left field, but a trait of latchkey kids.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yep. Definitely was one of those.
You know what I mean? So so yeah, same here. I was a latchkey kid as well, in that, spending all that time where you're going home from school, mom's and pops are divorced, but I'm living with mom's, and mom's is at her job, and she's fighting traffic to get back home at some point. But I'm letting myself in the house. Matter of fact, I'm getting my sisters, and I'm bringing them into the fold, or bringing them into the apartment. And I'm sorry, your text just distracted me. I don't think you meant to say that to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was saying it next. It doesn't matter anyways. Like, let's just keep it real. Gene, come on in, man.
It's all good. It's all
I'm sorry,
good.
don't lose your thought. Latchkey kid.
You're good. Yeah. Being a latchkey kid, spending all that time by yourself, I think it puts you in a place where you're given the opportunity to zone in on thoughts that probably a lot of kids have, but in a world that's always vying for their distraction, And in a world where society is making you feel guilty for having these thoughts, our people are calling you out in real time. They don't have an opportunity to dive deeper on them. And I think that latchkey kids don't really have a choice. I'd like to say that I was working on homework when I got home, but there's no way in hell I was. I was watching TV. I was eating up, food and all of that stuff. But at some point, you're able to really take in your day, separated away from your friends, separated away from the experiences of the day, and think to yourself about things that a lot of kids are not thinking about. And so they said that hypersensitivity is a trait of latchkey kids. They I guess they've done studies that were saying, but I think that's what a lot of us creators have in common is that that hypersensitivity is also a superpower of ours. Because we have to be, to a certain degree, hypersensitive of the details that people who don't look at themselves as highly emotional overlook, right? The look in someone's eyes. What the hell does that mean? The look in their eyes. They just, they were just mad. It's like, no, I see pain.
Right.
How can you see pain? That nuance, I think, is from that hypersensitivity, because you know what it's like to walk in that person's shoes.
You've run through the reps enough times that it's easy for you to see the signs, and a lot of them are very micro. And that what I've found is that works on that part of your brain that if you look and you understand, like music production, recording, all these kind of things, it's very transferable because you're able to literally like define the lines. You know what I mean? Like you learn how to work in that. And then you teach yourself how to be creative in that, and so on and so on. And I'm sure that's with a lot of the arts, right? A lot of the process of going through understanding your particular art or your creative path or whatever it is that you make in life.
That's the funny part about it is that what I used to get criticized about, right? So this idea of being deep in the details, this idea of being a deep thinker, this idea of articulating these deep thoughts, used to get everything about me called out. Everything up until, I think the worst one was, you don't talk black.
Sure.
That was one that came up when you have certain thoughts as a youth. That was a thing that people kind of try to throw at you. But the funniest and the most ironic thing about all of this is that 30 odd years later, I get hired by probably the same kids that were making these judgments because of my ability to dive deeper into the feelings they never wanted to talk about, or to dive deeper into things that they're overwhelmed by. I see it when I'm giving consultations and I'm talking to folks and I'm like, this is not high level stuff and you're already overwhelmed. Like you recognize that the stuff that's really high level things, like that's stuff that I'm dealing with not even dealing with, that I'm interacting with on a regular basis. Are you sure this is what you want to do?
Yeah.
But then I recognize, even if it's not what they want to do, this is what they pay us for. They pay us to be the video editors. They pay us to be the campaign planners for their social media. They pay us to tell them about the details of how to use this AI app. They pay us to, like, that is our role. And that has always been our role. It's just a matter of if we were willing to embrace it.
And let's not forget, they also sometimes are paying us to filter their own ideas, like to filter all those things. You know what I mean? A lot of times I know that definitely happened for people that I've paid over the years, where I'm like, oh, you know what? I didn't actually want to do that at all. Like, or whatever it was, you know? I mean, bro, I remember you figuring out YouTube, like it's mind blowing. Like when we look at it right now, bro, like you remember the beginnings of YouTube, and then you going through the process of like, I'm gonna do this. Damn, this shit's hard, blah, blah, all these different things. And then to where it's at now, like it does feel like sometimes like, oh man, we just stepped into another like we just stepped through realities until you get to the one. Yeah.
It's the same. Like it's obviously the same shit, different toilet. It's different. It's like different skins. you got like games that have different skins. Like it's different
Mhm.
skins, but it's literally the same game. I thought what was really interesting about what you were talking about in building the satellite. Um, two things that brings up. I wanted to make for a science project a jet engine in 7th grade. And I told my dad this idea, and I was like, for the science fair, like our science project at Curtis Middle School, I was like, Pops, I think I just want to make this jet engine. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I think I have this vision of if we go to Home Depot, maybe I can get like some flower pots and like I can put a
Yeah.
hole through it. And then I was like, maybe I can use like the front end of a fan. And I literally planned this whole thing out of my brain at that age. And he was just like, I'm gonna help you and we're gonna figure it out. And we figured it out. And it was so cool looking. It even had like a little what do you call those? Like the stuff you put on the trees, the little
Like tinsel?
not even, yeah, kind of like the tinsel. Like that was
Yeah.
flying out and it was looking, the kids were like, what is that? But fast forward to even when I started to get into music in the early years, I spent so much time on that back patio of my grandparents where I started my music career that remember watching a YouTube video where this guy from, I don't know where he was from, was making a vocoder out of a box, out of some wiring and even like this vocal, I mean, it wasn't even a vocal tube, it was just a tube you get at a hardware place. And I remember getting all the supplies, nobody's help, spent my money from work, came home, my mom was just looking through the window like, what is this boy doing? And I put it together and I might have used it 3 times, but the idea wasn't me using this and becoming a vocoder master. The idea was, can I do that myself? Like, can I?
Yeah.
I mean, I never worked with hardware like that before, but can I make this? And then I made it and I showed my mom. My mom still talks about it to this day. She's like, I just couldn't believe that you would, like, that was something, because she's from the generation of vocoder. She's like, you made that in the patio.
Right.
You're helping me kind of realize too. It's like a therapy session, and that even before that, before all of that stuff that I mentioned, man, even when it was like when I was a big Deion Sanders fan, a football fan, I was the kid that used my grandparents' paper bags from grocery shopping, and I would cut out the sides, cut out the head, and I'd make a jersey out of those. I would write the 21 on those. So it's like, once again, going back to what you alluded to earlier, you get hints of this.
Yeah.
And
from
it's
the
almost
beginning.
like you get hints of this, but it's almost like that's part of the lesson in itself. Are you going to listen to it? Are you going to do something about it?
Right.
And just to think that some people didn't actually revisit that thought until 2020, like, blows my mind.
Well, here's and I'm gonna send you this, dude. So again, in the study of this, right, knowing that what you and I, and again, you have to understand like how happy it always makes me to be able to have this conversation with somebody and you follow it completely, and you're like, in fact, here's my 2 cents, like, because it just it confirms for me in this thing that I have been studying for so long. And just even recently, I found just some books. I'm going to make a book list too and put it on our website, by the way. But I've been reading some books that are, 1900s, pre-1900s. And there's people that are talking about this exact thing, right? You go back even farther, to ancient philosophers. They were already starting to connect these ideas of momentum of thought in any direction and how that unfolds and all the pieces and what that can create. And so, like, again, when I talk about like us being types, right? Like it's a long path to the beginning, from the beginning to here, of people who have built on these ideas, and all of them across the board do speak of that intangible feeling that it seemed to have awoken in them, something awoken in them. And then the one thing that they all agree on is it's very, very, very hard to turn off. It's almost impossible to reverse. And that for most people, it does consume their lives in some way, positive and negative, right? Again, along the spectrum. But yeah, to have someone be able to understand just the conversation, or to even want to have the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, that's the other thing. And I've become way more empathetic on that topic alone. Because I get, depending on where you're at in your life, you thinking about these kind of things, it might not be suitable. It's why a lot of the great minds talk about not necessarily giving, like, pushing advice on somebody, simply putting out information, right? Because pushing someone advice on somebody assumes that that person is ready to receive it, and they're completely there, you know. But yeah, man, I continue this study. You're a part of this study, Kurt. You've been a part of it for quite some time.
I'm honored.
But yeah, I do. And I hope that it makes other creatives feel, you know, especially if you are in a place of like, man, it's, you know, what's this all about? What, am I too different? Am I too strange? Like, I assure you, if there's anything that I have at least found out that on that part, no, you are not. You're not. You're actually not strange. There's a whole school of this thought.
And,
you know,
and the idea of strange being something that's a handicap,
right,
instead of another color in the color palette.
Yes.
Like that. It's almost like saying to somebody who's a millionaire, am I too rich?
Yeah.
Too rich?
Right.
Should I not? Like, most human beings wouldn't even fathom the idea.
Or a runner, am I too fast?
Am I too
or
fast?
A swimmer? Yeah.
You have an endless amount of inspiration and an endless amount of. You have some rare colors. When you're weird, you have some very rare colors that can make somebody look at your painting and say, well, I think I've seen this technique before, but I've never seen these particular colors in this order. What made you go with that? And then that's where you get to tell your story. Like, you want that to be what it is, and you couldn't be anybody else if you wanted to. Right. I got a buddy of mine that said
that's the catch.
He said some really, like, he's one of my best friends in the whole world. My buddy Keaton. He said, "You're not crazy because you crazy, Curtis." He said, "You crazy because you know you crazy, but you try to walk around here like you're normal." He said, "Stop it, stop."
That's the
bro.
theme of the year, my friend. That's the theme of the year.
He said, "You're not crazy because you crazy. There's a lot of crazy people out here. We know it. At least we acknowledge that, right? We got some in our family."
Yeah.
He's like, "You crazy for trying to, like, there's nothing
pretend
wrong
you wow.
There's nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. Everything's A1." And it's like the moment that I started to embrace, and I shouldn't say the moment, it wasn't one singular moment, but all the moments that I continuously embrace that, dog, that's just who you are. Right? That's just who you are. It's almost like sitting in Vegas. That's the bet you made. The roulette wheel is moving. Can't change it now. This is who you are. Yes, you can make alterations, but why are you making the alterations? And also, what is so wrong with you being you? What is so wrong? And who holds the key to this universal wisdom, who's also another human being, that can tell you how to be a better you? You show me that person who is without any error, any flaw, that can feed that to you. You show me the person that has all the answers. When I started recognizing, and it's going to sound so ridiculous when I say it, because when I say it out loud, it does feel that way. But when I started recognizing that I was listening to anybody that sounded like they had the answers, and that everybody out here is theorizing, I feel like that's not an epiphany I could have discovered in my 20s. Because once again, as the latchkey kid, as the hypersensitive kid, as the one that's trying to people please everybody around me, that wasn't in my toolkit. Now though, at 38, this is why I'm able to call so much stuff as it is. I call a spade a spade. I know when the proper time is, and I know when you need to just fall back and do you and mind your business. But I have no fear when it comes to me showing you who I am, because inevitably we're going to cross this path. If you piss me off, you're gonna see a completely different Curtis. And it's like, is that a completely different Curtis, or is that who you've always been?
Yeah.
So I'd much rather be this human being that I can go to sleep proud of. I can go to sleep saying, you know what, flawed and all, that's my guy, and I'm sticking next to him.
Yeah.
That's just he's a work in development like anybody else. But I think a lot of us, you know, we when we really dive into like our upbringing, dive into our childhood, dive into our thoughts on authority, dive into all these different things, we start to recognize that we give people around us a whole lot more credit than they deserve. Because the person in the room that's talking the loudest sounds like the most confident one.
Yeah.
But time will reveal that's probably the most insecure one. They just choose to show their insecurity, not in vulnerability, but in velocity.
Right.
When I recognize that, I'm like, it's not that I don't respect anybody else's opinion, but it really just, it helps me stay in a more stoic demeanor. Because I know that even when I gather an answer, I'm not shit. I don't know shit. And even when I'm in a situation where I feel lost, I recognize that, dude, you're literally living in this scene of this movie, and the movie's it's gonna end all right. You're gonna be fine. But this is this part of the movie. Keep going. You're not that far away from the answer. And it's likely that you're gonna do all this work trying to figure it out. And then recognize, like I said earlier, the keys are hanging right there. It's not that deep. But you and your personality type, Curtis, you got to do all that so that you can lay to rest. Every stone is turned. Everything, like, you've done your due diligence. And me recognizing that, I don't walk away from these situations feeling like I've wasted my time. Last year, for 6-7 months, I was every week 20-30 hour editing for one video. Just to fast forward to this year, and I just finished an edit in an hour that is going to do more numbers than the other ones did.
Wow.
So it's like, who am I going to get mad at? Am I going to get mad at the fact that, oh God, why'd I have to go through that to discover it? Because you had to go through that to discover it.
Right. Yeah.
Life is just, some folks will say life. I just say God has an amazing sense of humor that I'm still trying to understand, but I love it.
Yeah, Parker said the fish doesn't get mad because he's wet. You know, he just is. It just is.
It's just like we're in the environment. We are who we are. And that's not to say that I'm not still working on myself. I'm doing that daily.
For sure.
Just like anybody else, but at the same time, I've been so used to living a life in which I've given everybody else power over my decision making, power over influencing me, more so than the person that's been around me every day of my life, which is me. Right? Which is, my faith in God. Like I've given so much to everyone else, and it's like, dog, I'm the one that got to deal with all the stuff that you trusted in them. You got to deal with that. You lay your head down here, I'm right here with you. What we doing? So this is probably the first year that I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna walk in faith, even when I know I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
That's awesome, man. That's beautiful, bro. I'm not gonna keep you too much longer. We are officially, just imagine it, y'all. We are officially tour mates. We can say that for real. We have a tour kicking off. By the time this comes out, we'll be a little into it already. What's the tour? What is this tour for you? Talk a little bit about your thoughts on it. What you're envisioning. What can people expect to see when they come see you?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I'm really excited, as you alluded to too. Like, all of us being on tour, I think a lot of people will be surprised about how many things we all have in common and how many ways we see this in common. It's super dope to see, like, very like casual conversations about independence. Even our interview that we had at Eddie's crib, like, seeing that kind of like boil itself into and seeing it play itself out. I'm excited to get out there with my fam, but then also I'm supremely excited about hitting the stage again. this consistently and having this to look forward to every week, and also being able to come back home. Like, usually tours, you can't do this kind of a thing where you go out and then it's like, all right, we'll come home and in a few days you jump back out. So I haven't been in this space as a content creator, and I'm excited about what that can mean for the content. I'm excited to see people in person. I'm excited to see how far our influence reaches now being media and what that looks like. Because I feel like in a lot of ways, when people get to media, I asked somebody this earlier. I was like, do you think there's a such thing as what I want to call the exhibit Pimp My Ride effect, where his music doesn't quite sound the same after he's been media trained? It almost sounds like, it's not that it sounds bad, it just sounds supremely polished.
Right.
And it
like
loses,
he was almost too aware.
Almost too aware, like, I need to pronounce this like this because I've been speaking like this, and I learned, like, you can't unlearn certain things about voiceover work because that's a part of your work. So I wonder what happens when artists get into media. Do they lose, let's call it the edge, an edge? So now being in a show atmosphere, I know what it's like to host a show online. And I've performed, of course, thousands of, times, but I'm excited about stepping into this new space because it's like some people who only know me from video are going to see me in this space and not recognize me. I like that, but y'all, we out there as family. So there's a lot of things, man. It's just the variable of it all. The fact that I'm able to document it, the fact that it's independent, we're able to show independent and blast it all the way around. What an exciting time. So I'm looking forward to every single day.
All right. And real quick before I let you go, there is a competition that is attached to this tour, right? What we're doing is we're selecting an artist from every stop that's literally going to get a spot on the festival, which is crazy to me. That's so crazy. Like, you could literally inject some steroids into whatever you're doing by getting that spot on Thought Fest. There's a competition. If you had to give 3 pointers for somebody who's going to be in this competition, give them, if you would, give us 3 pointers.
3 pointers. First point, every round is final round.
Oof.
Some people reserve energy like they're an NBA player that has to reserve energy for the fourth quarter. No. Because you every round, because isn't it, is it multiple rounds from what I remember?
I think it's
multiple rounds, right? Or is it one?
I'm assuming from what I know is it goes down to one 10-minute set, and then I believe there can be a playoff if it's close.
So I would say to get yourself in a position to where you focus on energy, consistency, and connectivity. Those are my 3. Energy is important because that's what we remember more than your music, is the way that you jump on that stage, the way that from the very beginning, and some people overdo it. Some people get on stage and they make it all about them instead of recognizing, no, you're here to rock a show. Just like we do. We have a responsibility to rock a show. We don't care if people know us. We have a responsibility to rock a show. Connectivity. You need to make sure that you acknowledge that there's human beings who are standing. The whole idea of a show in itself is a very awkward thing when you think about it. But these human beings are standing, hands to their pockets, looking at you, putting up hip hop hands. You got to be able to connect with them. So it was, what was the third one I said? So I said it was the energy, connection, and consistency. That's something people lose. They start off real strong, and then you can tell they're already losing steam in 10 minutes.
Ooh.
So you got to get yourself to a place where it's like, if you need a break, make it a part of your show. Where it's like, did y'all hear what I said? No. I said, da-da-da-da-da. Give us some thought. And you just, in silence. And then you go to the next song. Like, there's so much confidence in that. That allows you to stay consistent through every performance. Don't go in there and burn yourself out with one song. But set a pace that you can keep up from beginning to end. So that's it. Energy, connectivity with the audience, and then consistency. And I think you'll at least walk away from there, which should be everybody's goal, proud of what you did that night.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think the bonus is honestly just you performing at the competition. The show is going to be lit.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Oh
Like
man.
the whole
Yeah.
team is
For
coming
sure.
to bring their A game. So you performing on that is awesome. But yes, those are some amazing tips. Guys, follow everything Curtis King. 2 S's. Anything you want them to check out right now, Kurt?
Curtis King TV YouTube. That's number one. That's
Cool.
number uno. Curtis King TV YouTube. I'll put up a video every day this month in April. I'm obviously going to slow down just a little bit for preparation for the tour, but yeah, like you got me out here inspired, man. Chris sees the internet. Curtis is now reacting to the internet and the ridiculousness out here that I'm seeing. And it's a new space for me because I'm not used to talking about other people and talking about, things that are trending in the news. It's really been about, other stuff. But now that it's here, it's an interesting challenge, but it's definitely reaping a lot of rewards. So come to YouTube.
I'm enjoying it, man. I'm enjoying it. I'm waiting to see Curtis King on the red carpet in many forms. So I'm gonna keep watching, bro. And trust me, we will do probably a few of these out on tour. We're gonna do a bunch of conversations. I got a bunch of ideas for that. I know you do too. Kurt's gonna be documenting it. So there you go, Curtis King TV on YouTube, especially for the tour. If you're following the tour, go there. There's gonna be a bunch of BTS, bunch of vlog stuff. So go check that out.
Facts.
Thanks a lot, man.
I'm really trying to own it. I need some space in this place, so I can't control it. Yeah, I ain't got no room in me, guys.